I thought it would be just another boring corporate event. The kind where people pretend to care about charity while actually networking for their next business deal. The kind where omegas like me get patted on the head and told to fetch champagne, because apparently my designation still means servant to half these people, even in the 21st century. I was only there because my best friend Marcus, bless his chaotic beta heart, begged me to fill in as a photographer's assistant. His usual guy had gone into an unexpected heat, and Marcus was desperate. The pay was decent, and I needed rent money. So there I stood, adjusting lights and fetching equipment, trying not to look as out of place as I felt among all these alphas in tailored suits and omegas in designer gowns, their pheromones mingling into a complicated cocktail of power and perfume. My own scent, honey and chamomile, soft and unassuming, barely registered in this crowd. I liked it that way. Invisible was safe. But then I saw him. A small boy, maybe 4 or 5 years old, sitting alone in the corner of this massive ballroom. He was wearing a tiny navy blue suit that looked expensive but somehow sat on him. His fingers moved methodically over a red toy car, spinning its wheels again and again. What struck me wasn't just that he was alone. It was the way everyone seemed to actively avoid looking at him. Like he was invisible. Like he didn't exist. I watched as an omega woman, elegant, dripping in diamonds, nearly tripped over his outstretched leg. She muttered something annoyed and kept walking without even glancing down. The boy didn't react. He just kept playing with that car, lost in his own silent world. Something pulled at my chest. That kind of loneliness wasn't right for anyone, especially not a child. Especially not when I knew exactly what it felt like to be overlooked, dismissed, treated like furniture. I had a sign language certificate gathering dust in my drawer at home. I'd taken a class 3 years ago, thinking it would make my resume look more impressive to potential employers who might otherwise see Omega and think liability. I'd honestly forgotten most of it. But seeing this kid sitting there, completely isolated in a room full of hundreds of people, it made me want to try. I set down the camera bag and walked over slowly, not wanting to startle him. When I got close enough, I crouched down to his level. My hands trembled slightly as I carefully formed the signs I'd barely used since college. "What is your name?" His head snapped up so fast I almost fell backward. For the first time since I'd noticed him, his eyes came alive. They were bright green, almost ethereal, wide with disbelief and something that looked like desperate hope. He stared at my hands like they were performing magic. Then, slowly and deliberately, he signed back. "Mikhail." My heart hammered in my chest. This little boy had been sitting here the entire evening, and I was probably the first person who'd even attempted to communicate with him. I smiled and signed again. "That is a very cool car. My name is Derek." Mikhail's whole face transformed. He actually smiled, a genuine, beautiful smile that made him look exactly like the happy kid he should have been. He held out the car to me with both hands, offering it shyly. It was such a simple gesture, but it felt monumental. Like he was asking, "Will you really stay? Will you really play with me?" I took the car gently and rolled it across the marble floor between us. Mikhail's eyes followed it, and he laughed, a silent, breathy laugh, but a laugh nonetheless. We passed the car back and forth, and for those few minutes, the crowded ballroom faded away. It was just us, two people actually seeing each other. That's when I felt it. Presence. Heavy and warm and saturated with the most intense alpha pheromones I'd ever encountered. Cedar and citrus, underlaid with something darker, smoke and storm clouds and raw, commanding power. My hindbrain went absolutely haywire. Alpha. Strong. Dangerous. Safe. I looked up and my breath caught. The man standing over us was tall, easily over 6 feet, with a presence that commanded attention without effort. His suit was charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, probably worth more than my entire wardrobe combined. Dark hair swept back from a sharp jawline. And his eyes. Gray. the color of storm clouds. Cold, calculating, fixed directly on me with an intensity that made my skin prickle, and my omega instincts war between submit and run. His scent washed over me again, and I felt an unwelcome flush creep up my neck. My own honey chamomile pheromone spiked with something I refused to name. Attraction? Fear? Both? Who are you? His voice was low, controlled, but carried an unmistakable edge of authority. He didn't ask so much as demand. I stood up quickly, suddenly very aware that I was in borrowed dress pants and a shirt that didn't quite fit right. I'm Derek. I was just... Mikhail seemed lonely, so I thought I'd say hello. Those gray eyes scanned me from head to toe, evaluating, judging, and then a flicker. His nostrils flared slightly, almost imperceptibly. He was scenting me. Oh, God. I watched his expression shift, something unreadable passing across his features. He knew what I was now. Omega. I'm bonded. Here. You know sign language. Yes, I managed trying to keep my voice steady. I learned it in college. Something shifted in his expression, though calling it softening would be too generous. He looked down at Mikhail, who was still holding the toy car and watching our interaction with cautious eyes. The boy's earlier happiness had dimmed slightly, replaced by wariness. The man's gaze returned to me. Don't move from this spot. It wasn't a request. It was an order, delivered with the casual confidence of someone who expected immediate obedience. My omega hindbrain practically purred at the command, even as my rational mind bristled. He walked several feet away and pulled out his phone, speaking in low tones. I couldn't hear over the ballroom's ambient noise, but I watched his posture, rigid, controlled, absolutely alpha. I looked back at Mikhail. Who is that man? Mikhail's small hands moved. My papa. That information settled over me like a weight. This intimidating, ice-cold man was this sweet, lonely child's father. I watched him on the phone, his expression unreadable. Everything about him screamed power and control. Everything except the way his eyes had briefly softened when he looked at Mikhail. When he returned, his expression had shifted to something marginally less hostile. I'm Cyrus Hale. He introduced himself, offering no hand to shake. Mikhail's father. We need to talk. About what? He glanced around the ballroom with barely concealed distaste. The event is ending soon. Meet me in the Riverside Lounge on the second floor in 20 minutes. Before I could respond, he turned to Mikhail and signed something I couldn't quite catch. Mikhail nodded and signed back, then looked at me with those hopeful green eyes again. Cyrus straightened. 20 minutes, Mr. Evans. Derek Evans. 20 minutes, Mr. Evans. He placed a hand on Mikhail's shoulder and guided him away, but not before Mikhail turned and waved at me. An actual, genuine wave. I stood there, toy car still in my hand, completely bewildered. What had just happened? More importantly, what did Cyrus Hale want to talk to me about? Marcus found me 15 minutes later, looking annoyed. Where have you been? We're packing up. I know I'm sorry. Something came up. He noticed the toy car in my hand. Did you steal from a kid? What? No. I looked down at it. I need to return this. Give me 10 minutes. Marcus sighed dramatically. Fine, but make it quick. I want to get out of here before traffic hits. And Derek, he lowered his voice, glancing around. Your scent is doing something weird. You okay? I blinked. What do you mean? I don't know, you just smell different. More intense. Like honey, but stronger. You sure you're not going into heat? I'm not due for weeks, I said, though his words sent a spike of unease through me. I'm fine. 10 minutes. I took the elevator to the second floor, my palms sweating. The Riverside Lounge was quieter, more intimate, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights. Cyrus sat in a leather chair, Mikhail beside him on a tablet, drawing something with intense concentration. When Cyrus saw me, he stood. "Mr. Evans, thank you for coming. I brought Mikhail's car back," I said, holding it out. Mikhail's face lit up, and he took it carefully, signing a quick, "Thank you." Cyrus watched this exchange with an unreadable expression. Then he said something that would change everything. "I need to hire you." I blinked. "Excuse me?" "For Mikhail. I need someone who can communicate with him the way you did tonight." His gray eyes held mine. "I need someone like you." The words hung in the air between us, heavy with implications I couldn't quite grasp yet. "Mr. Hale, I'm not exactly sure what you're asking." "Sit." He gestured to the chair across from him. It was phrased as an invitation, but felt like a command. I sat. Cyrus leaned back, fingers steepled in front of him, a posture that screamed boardroom negotiations. His scent filled the space between us, and I had to consciously stop myself from breathing too deeply. Mikhail is deaf. He's been working with therapists and specialists since he was 2. But progress has been limited. He paused. Not because of his abilities. A defensive edge crept into his voice. But because most people don't have the patience or genuine interest to truly connect with him. I glanced at Mikhail, who was drawing what looked like a park on his tablet. "He seems incredibly bright." "He is." For the first time, Cyrus's expression softened with unmistakable pride. But intelligence means nothing when the world refuses to meet you where you are. Tonight was the first time in months I've seen him genuinely happy around a stranger. My chest tightened at that. That's heartbreaking. It's reality. Cyrus's tone sharpened back to business. "Which brings me to my offer. I need a tutor for Mikhail. Someone who can work with him daily, help him develop his language skills, and more importantly, someone he actually wants to spend time with." I opened my mouth to protest, but he continued. "I'm aware you're not a certified educator. I've done my research in the 15 minutes since we met." "Yes, that quickly." He pulled out his phone and showed me a screen. "Derek Evans, 26. Graduated from Morrison State with a degree in graphic design. Currently freelancing, though based on your LinkedIn, it's been sparse work lately. You took ASL courses during your junior year, but never pursued it professionally. And bonded Omega. No heat suppressant prescription on file for the past 3 months." He crept up my neck, not just from embarrassment, but from my actual body temperature rising at the casual way. He just announced my designation and medical history in public. "That's thorough. I don't make decisions without information." He set his phone down. "Your qualifications on paper are irrelevant. What matters is that in 5 minutes, you did something dozens of trained professionals couldn't do. You made my son feel seen." The weight of that statement settled over me. "Mr. Hale, with all respect, I'd like to help, but I'm not qualified to." "Name your rate." "I'm sorry. Whatever you were going to say about qualifications, I don't care. Name your rate, and I'll double it." My mind raced. I was 3 weeks behind on rent. My laptop was dying, and I'd been living on ramen and hope. But this felt too big, too important to mess up. $5,000 a week, I said, mostly as a joke. "Done." The air left my lungs. "I'm sorry, did you say done? Plus benefits if you work more than 3 months. You'll have access to all the resources you need, books, materials, whatever helps Mikhail learn." Cyrus watched my shocked expression with something almost resembling amusement. "Is that sufficient motivation to reconsider your qualification speech?" I did the math in my head. That was more than I made in 2 months of freelancing. That's incredibly generous. I'm not being generous. I'm being practical. His expression hardened slightly. "But understand this, Mr. Evans. If you accept, I expect commitment. Mikhail doesn't need another person who'll drift in and out of his life. He needs consistency." There was something beneath his words, a pain he wasn't naming. I wondered who else had drifted out of Mikhail's life. What would the schedule look like? Weekday mornings, 9 to 2. Flexibility is needed. You'll work primarily at my home, though occasional outings for educational purposes would be expected. He paused. And one more thing. Mikhail's privacy is paramount. No social media. No discussing him with anyone outside necessary professionals. I will not have my son become tabloid fodder. That last part carried weight that suggested personal experience. I nodded slowly. I understand. Cyrus studied me for a long moment. You have reservations. Voice them. I appreciated the directness. What happens if it doesn't work out? If Mikhail and I don't click the way you think we will, then we reassess. But you get paid regardless for your time. He leaned forward. However, I don't think that'll be an issue. As if on cue, Mikhail tugged on his father's sleeve and signed something. Cyrus responded. Then Mikhail turned to me and signed. Will you come to my house tomorrow? His eyes were so full of hope, it physically hurt to look at him. I glanced at Cyrus, who watched the interaction with barely concealed intensity. I turned back to Mikhail and signed. If your papa wants me to, yes. Mikhail's smile could have powered the city below us. Is that a yes, Mr. Evans? Cyrus asked. I took a deep breath, feeling like I was standing on the edge of a cliff about to jump. Yes, I'll do it. Cyrus extended his hand. When I shook it, his grip was firm, assured, and warm. His scent intensified for just a moment, flooding my senses with cedar and something else. Something that made my omega hindbrain whisper mate. I pulled away quickly, hoping he hadn't noticed the flush spreading across my cheeks. My driver will collect you at 8:30 tomorrow morning. Text me your address. He handed me a business card with his personal number, written on the back in sharp, precise handwriting. Should I prepare anything specific? Just yourself. We'll handle the rest. I left the lounge in a daze, my phone clutched in my hand with Cyrus Hale's number already saved. Marcus was waiting by the service elevator, tapping his foot impatiently. Finally. What took so long? I just got hired, I said, still processing. Hired by who? I looked back toward the lounge, where through the glass I could see Cyrus lifting Mikhail onto his shoulders. Cyrus Hale. Marcus's jaw dropped. The Cyrus Hale. The billionaire CEO Cyrus Hale. Apparently, to do what? I smiled, despite my nervousness. To teach his son. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Mikhail's smile, Cyrus's intense gray eyes, and the fact that tomorrow, my entire life was about to change in ways I couldn't possibly predict. Also, my body was doing something strange. My temperature kept spiking. My scent, which I'd always been able to control with moderate suppressants, was blooming out of me like I hadn't taken anything in weeks. I checked my prescription bottle. 3 months expired. Shit. I'd been so broke I'd stopped refilling my suppressants without even realizing it. And now I was about to spend 5 days a week in close quarters with an alpha whose scent already made my knees weak. This was fine. Everything was fine. The car that picked me up the next morning wasn't just nice. It was ridiculous. Sleek black Mercedes with leather seats that probably cost more than my yearly income. The driver, a quiet beta named Thomas, made polite small talk about the weather before lapsing into comfortable silence. When we pulled through the gates of Cyrus's estate, I pressed my face against the window like a kid. Calling it a house felt insulting. It was a modern architectural masterpiece, all clean lines and enormous windows, surrounded by manicured gardens that could have been in magazines. The entire property was saturated with a faint scent of cedar and citrus. Cyrus's signature, I realized. He'd marked his territory so thoroughly that even the air knew who was in charge. Thomas walked me to the front door, which opened before we could knock. A woman in her 50s with kind eyes and graying hair smiled at me. You must be Derek. I'm Helen, the house manager. Come in, please. The interior was even more impressive. High ceilings, minimal but expensive furniture, artwork that looked original. And everywhere that scent. Cedar and citrus, wrapping around me like a second skin. Helen led me through to a bright sunroom where Mikhail sat at a low table with various toys and books scattered around him. His face transformed when he saw me. He jumped up and signed. "You came. I promised, didn't I?" I signed back, grinning. Helen watched this exchange with visible approval. "Mr. Hale is finishing a call in his office. He'll join you shortly. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Tea?" "Coffee would be great, thank you." She left, and I sat down with Mikhail, who immediately began showing me a book about dinosaurs. We went through it page by page, me signing the names of each creature, Mikhail correcting my fingerspelling when I got it wrong. His knowledge was impressive. He knew not just names but facts about their diets, periods, extinction theories. "You really love dinosaurs," I signed. He nodded enthusiastically and signed back, "Especially the flying ones. Pterodactyls. Pterodactyls are very cool." His smile widened. "Yes? Nobody else knows the right name." Something about that statement gutted me. This brilliant kid was so starved for basic connection that someone knowing the proper term for a pterodactyl felt special to him. We were deep into a debate about whether pterodactyls were technically dinosaurs. They weren't, but Mikhail argued they should count anyway, when I felt eyes on us. I looked up. Cyrus stood in the doorway, coffee cup in hand, watching. Our eyes met, and something electric passed between us before he looked away. "Good morning, Mr. Evans." "Morning." I stood awkwardly. "And please, just Derek." He considered this. "Derek, then." His nostrils flared almost imperceptibly, and I watched his expression shift. He was sending me again. "I see Mikhail's already recruited you into the great dinosaur debate. He's got strong opinions about prehistoric classification," I said, which made Mikhail giggle silently. Cyrus's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "He comes by that honestly. His mother was a paleontology professor." Was past tense. I caught it but didn't push. Helen arrived with my coffee, and Cyrus outlined the day's expectations: reading practice, number games, some physical activity in the garden. "I'll be in my office if you need anything, though Helen can answer most questions." "You're not staying?" The words came out before I could stop them. Cyrus paused, something unreadable crossing his face. "I have work. And Mikhail needs space to bond with you without me hovering." But the way he said it suggested he wasn't entirely comfortable with that plan. He knelt beside Mikhail and signed something I couldn't quite follow. Too fast, too personal. Mikhail nodded and hugged him tightly. When Cyrus stood, his jaw was set in that controlled way that suggested buried emotion. After he left, the day flowed surprisingly naturally. Mikhail was a quick learner, patient with my still rusty signing, and creative in ways that consistently surprised me. We built block towers and knocked them down, practiced writing letters in shaving cream, Helen's suggestion, and spent an hour in the garden looking for bugs. During lunch, Helen told me stories about Mikhail. How he'd memorized every book in his room. How he'd once tried to build a robot from kitchen utensils. How he loved thunderstorms but hated the vacuum cleaner. Each story painted a picture of a remarkable kid who'd been dealt an unfair hand by the world. Around 2 o'clock, when we were cleaning up our art supplies, I noticed Cyrus watching again, from a different doorway. This time, he didn't hide it. "How was his focus today?" he asked, stepping into the room. "Incredible." We worked for nearly 40 minutes straight on the alphabet puzzle. Cyrus's eyebrows rose slightly. "That's longer than he's managed with anyone else." Mikhail, oblivious to being discussed, was arranging his toy cars by color on the shelf. Cyrus watched him with such unguarded tenderness that I felt like an intruder on something private. "He's exceptional," I said quietly. "You know that, right?" Cyrus's eyes snapped to me. "Yes. I don't think everyone has told you that enough." Something in his expression cracked, just for a second before the careful mask returned. "Thank you for today. Thomas will drive you home whenever you're ready." That became our routine. 5 days a week, I arrive at 8:30 and leave around 2. Mikhail and I developed our own language. Beyond signs, inside jokes, made-up games, a whole private world. And Cyrus? Cyrus remained at a distance, but never quite absent. I'd catch him watching from doorways, lingering nearby, finding excuses to check in. Each time his scent would hit me like a wave, and each time I feel my own pheromones responding in ways I couldn't control. My suppressants had officially run out, and I couldn't afford a refill. Not that I could tell him that. "Hey Cyrus, the Omega you hired to spend unsupervised time with your young son is experiencing breakthrough pheromone surges and keeps having to lock himself, in the bathroom to compose himself before his scent gives away how badly he wants to climb you like a tree." Yeah, that would go over great. 2 weeks in, everything shifted. I was in the kitchen, getting Mikhail a snack, when Cyrus entered, loosening his tie. It was the first time I'd seen him in anything less than perfectly composed. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, his hair slightly mussed. "Long day?" I asked, slicing apple wedges. "Conference calls with Tokyo. Time zones are not my friend." He poured himself water from the fridge, standing close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive with notes of cedar and citrus layered over his natural alpha pheromones. God, he smelled good. "Mikhail's napping." "Yeah." He crashed after we spent an hour running around the garden. Cyrus smiled. A real smile, small but genuine. "You're good for him." I wasn't sure at first, but you're good for him. "He makes it easy. He's an amazing kid." "He is." Cyrus set down his glass and turned to face me fully. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why did you approach him that night at the gala?" Most people would have walked past. I thought about it. Because I know what it's like to be invisible. Different circumstances, but loneliness looks the same on everyone. Cyrus studied me with those intense gray eyes. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone doing this for the paycheck. Someone who'd see Mikhail as a job, not a person." He stepped closer. "But you actually care about him." "Of course I do." "That's rare." His voice dropped lower. "Rarer than you realize." We were standing too close. I knew it. He knew it. Neither of us moved. Cyrus's scent intensified, flooding my senses. Cedar and citrus and something darker, smoke and storm clouds and want. My own pheromones surged in response, honey and chamomile blooming out of me like a flower opening to the sun. I saw his pupils dilate. Derek. My name on his lips sounded different. Thicker. Rougher. "Your sin." "I know." My voice came out breathy. "I'm sorry. My suppressants ran out, and I..." "Don't apologize." He took another step closer, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating off his body. "It's not unpleasant. It's not." His hand came up slow enough that I could have moved away. I didn't. His fingers brushed my jaw, tilting my face up toward his. "No, it's..." He inhaled deeply, and a low sound rumbled in his chest, something between a groan and a growl. "Honey and chamomile. I've been smelling it on everything for weeks. My pillows. My shirts. Everywhere. I can't help it," I whispered. My pheromones have never responded to anyone like this. Neither have mine." He kissed me. Not gentle, not tentative. Desperate and hungry, like he'd been holding back for weeks, and finally snapped. His hand cupped my jaw, thumb brushing my cheekbone, and I melted into it despite every logical thought screaming that this was a terrible idea. I kissed him back just as desperately, my hands fisting in his expensive shirt, pulling him closer. He tasted like coffee and something darker, more complex. When his tongue swept against mine, I made a sound I'd be embarrassed about later. His other hand found my waist, pulling me against him. The hard planes of his body pressed against mine, and I felt the unmistakable evidence of his arousal through his slacks. Alpha. My hindbrain purred. Alpha wants you. Alpha wants to claim you. We broke apart, gasping. Cyrus pressed his forehead against mine, eyes closed, breathing ragged. This is insane, he whispered. I know. I'm your employer. I know. You work with my son. I know. This could destroy everything. I pulled back enough to meet his eyes. But I'm not sorry it happened. His gray eyes searched mine for a long moment. His hand, still cupping my face, trembled slightly. I haven't felt anything in years. Not since she left. I built walls, specifically to never feel this vulnerable again. Cyrus. And then you walk in here with your terrible jokes and your patience and your genuine kindness, and suddenly I'm feeling everything. And it terrifies me. The raw honesty in his voice cracked something open in my chest. I'm scared too. This is the most important job I've ever had. Mikhail needs stability. And if we mess this up, we can't mess this up. His voice turned fierce. Mikhail comes first. Always. No matter what happens between us, he comes first. Agreed, I said firmly. He's the priority. Cyrus nodded, then seemed to realize he was still holding my face. He dropped his hand but didn't step back. We need rules. Boundaries. Okay. Nothing in front of Mikhail. Nothing that could confuse or upset him. Of course. And if at any point this affects your relationship with him negatively, we stop. Absolutely. He studied me again, then made a decision. His hand found mine, fingers intertwining carefully, like he was handling something precious and breakable. I don't know how to do this, he admitted quietly. I'm not good at this. I squeezed his hand. We'll figure it out together. For the first time since that night in the kitchen, he smiled. Small but real. Together. We stood there for another moment, hands linked, both aware we just crossed a line we couldn't uncross. The smart thing would be to step back, pretend it never happened, maintain professional distance. Neither of us did the smart thing. When I finally left that night, Thomas drove me home in the usual silence. But my phone buzzed halfway there. Cyrus, thank you. For everything. For Mikhail. For today. Thank you for trusting me, Cyrus. Cyrus, I do. More than I've trusted anyone in a very long time. I stare at that message for the rest of the ride, my heart doing complicated things in my chest. I was falling for both of them, the quiet, brilliant boy and his guarded, complicated father. And I had no idea how this would end. We were careful. For 3 weeks, we were so careful. Nothing in front of Mikhail or Helen. Quick touches when we passed in hallways, stolen kisses in his office after Mikhail was in bed, late-night phone calls that lasted until dawn. It felt like being a teenager again, sneaking around, hearts racing at every near miss. Mikhail remained oblivious and happier than ever. He'd started a new program at a specialized school 3 days a week, making friends with other kids who signed. His confidence bloomed. He'd initiate conversations with Helen, show off new signs he'd learned, even started talking to Thomas during our drives. Watching him thrive made everything worth it. But we got sloppy. It was a Saturday, my day off technically. But Cyrus had asked if I wanted to join them at the park. As friends, he'd said carefully. Mikhail's been asking. The park was beautiful, still cold enough that our breath fogged, but sunny. Mikhail ran ahead to the playground while Cyrus and I walked slowly behind, maintaining careful distance. He asked me something yesterday, Cyrus said quietly. What? He asked what it would mean if he liked you. Not as his tutor. As more. My stomach flipped. What did you tell him? The truth. That I think you're remarkable. He paused. He said he hoped I'd marry you someday, so you'd stay forever. I nearly tripped over my own feet. He said that 5-year-olds have no filter. But Cyrus was smiling. He also asked if that meant you'd live with us and if he could have a puppy. I laughed despite my racing heart. One life change at a time. Cyrus's expression turned serious. Would you want that? Someday. Before I could answer, Mikhail called us over, signing excitedly about the slide. We joined him, the heavy conversation tabled. That's when I saw the camera. A man across the park. Long lens pointed directly at us. My blood went cold. Cyrus, I said quietly. Don't react, but there's a photographer. 3 o'clock. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He signed to Mikhail that it was time to go, keeping his voice cheerful. But as we walked to the car, I felt the weight of that lens following us. The photos hit the internet by evening. I was scrolling through my phone when my notifications exploded. Twitter, Instagram, news alerts. My hand shook as I opened the first article. Billionaire Alpha CEO Cyrus Hale's secret romance. Omega tutor caught an intimate moment. The photos were damning. One showed Cyrus smiling at me, a genuine soft smile I'd never seen him give anyone else. Another caught me touching his arm, the angle making it look more intimate than it was. But that didn't matter. The internet had decided what story to tell. The comments were vicious. What about his son? This is sick. Using that poor deaf child to get to the rich alpha. Disgusting. Gold digger Omega alert. He's just after the money and the pack status. I felt physically ill. My phone rang. My mom. My brother. Old college friends I hadn't spoken to in years. I ignored them all. Then Cyrus called. Don't come to the house tomorrow. His voice was flat, emotionless. What? Cyrus, I'm handling this. We should talk. In person. There's nothing to talk about. The situation needs to be contained. Contained. Anger sparked through my panic. What does that mean? It means you stay away until this blows over. What about Mikhail? Mikhail doesn't need this circus. Neither do you. He paused. I'll wire you 2 months severance. That should give you time to find something else. My world tilted. You're firing me? I'm protecting you. These people will tear you apart. They're already digging into your background, calling your former employers, harassing your family. So you're just giving up? My voice cracked. You're throwing me away because it got hard? I'm doing what's best for everyone involved. No, you're panicking. His composure finally shattered. Do you understand what they'll do to you if you stay connected to me? They'll destroy your reputation, your career, any chance you have at a normal life. You're an Omega, Derek. The world is not kind to Omegas who reach above their station. I don't care about any of that. I care about you and Mikhail. Well, I care. His voice went cold again. This is my decision. Stay away from my son. He hung up. I stare at my phone, unable to process what just happened. He'd ended it just like that. After everything. After Mikhail's drawings, after his promises, after telling me he trusted me. He'd come out the moment things got difficult. The next 24 hours were hell. My phone never stopped. Reporters found my apartment. Someone leaked my address online. I holed up inside, curtains drawn, watching my life implode on social media. And my body, traitor that it was, chose that exact moment to remind me that I'd been neglecting something important. My heat. It started as a low ache in my abdomen, a warmth spreading through my limbs. My scent intensified until I could barely stand being in my own apartment. Honey and chamomile, thick and cloying, filling every corner. Not now. Please, not now. I had no suppressants. No alpha to help me through it. Just my own miserable, hormonal body, making everything worse. I curled up on my bed, trembling, and tried not to think about Cyrus. About the way he smelled. About the way his hands felt on my skin. About the way he looked at me like I was something precious. It didn't work. My heat lasted 3 days. 3 days of fever and loneliness and dreams I couldn't escape. 3 days of reaching for someone who wasn't there. On the 4th morning, I woke up to a news alert. Breaking, Cyrus Hale calls emergency press conference. I turned on the live stream with shaking hands. Cyrus stood at a podium, looking exhausted but determined. Behind him, a simple backdrop with a Hale Enterprises logo. His gray eyes were shadowed, his jaw set. He waited for the room to quiet, then spoke. I built my career on honesty and integrity, so I'm going to be honest now. He looked directly into the camera. The man in those photos is Derek Evans. He's my son's tutor, yes, but he's also someone who's changed our lives in ways I didn't think possible. My heart stopped. 6 months ago, my son was isolated, struggling to connect with a world that didn't understand him. Derek saw him, really saw him in a way no one else had. He didn't just learn sign language for a job. He learned it because he genuinely cares about my son's well-being. Cyrus's voice strengthened. And yes, in the process, I developed feelings for him. Deep feelings. The kind I didn't think I was capable of anymore. Derek is an Omega, and I am an Alpha, and our designations have nothing to do with why I love him. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Cyrus ignored them. If that makes some of you uncomfortable, that's your burden to carry, not ours. My son is thriving. I'm happier than I've been in years. And Derek Evans is the reason for both. He paused, then looking directly at the camera again. Derek, if you're watching this, please come home. We need you. I need you. And I'm sorry for being a coward. The press conference erupted. I sat frozen, tears streaming freely. He'd just come out publicly. Risked his reputation, his business relationships, everything for me. I grabbed my keys and ran. The drive to his estate was a blur. When I arrived, reporters still crowded the gate, but security let me through immediately. And there, standing in the driveway like he'd been waiting, was Cyrus. I barely got out of the car before he was there, pulling me into his arms. I'm sorry. His voice cracked against my hair. I panicked. I thought pushing you away would protect you, but I was wrong. I was so wrong. I held him tighter, breathing in his scent, cedar and citrus, finally right after days without it. You scared me. I scared myself. He pulled back to look at me, his gray eyes scanning my face. You smell different. My heat, I admitted. It hit while you were gone. I went through it alone. Something dark and possessive flickered across his expression. Alone. I didn't have a choice. You're never going through a heat alone again. He cupped my face, thumbs brushing away my tears. Never. Do you understand me? I understand. I love you. He said it like a vow. I should have said that first. I love you, Derek. I love you too. We stood there, holding each other, while cameras flashed beyond the gate. And for the first time in days, I could breathe again. 6 months changed everything. The media storm eventually died down, replaced by newer scandals and shinier controversies. Some of Cyrus's business associates dropped him. Others, surprisingly, reached out with support. His company's stock dipped initially, then stabilized, then actually rose as younger demographics praised his authenticity. But the real changes happened at home. Mikhail flourished. His new school was perfect. Small classes, teachers fluent in ASL, kids who didn't see his deafness as a limitation. He came home every day, bursting with stories about his friends, new signs he'd learned, games they'd played. The lonely, invisible boy from that corporate event was gone, replaced by a confident, joyful kid. And me? I officially moved in 3 months ago. My tiny apartment was costing a fortune anyway, Cyrus had argued. The commute was ridiculous. Mikhail wanted me there. It made sense practically. But we both knew it was more than practical. I woke up in Cyrus's bed now, his arm around my waist. I had breakfast with both of them, helped Mikhail get ready for school, spent afternoons working on my graphic design projects in the study while Cyrus handled business calls. We'd become a unit. A family in ways I'd never expected. Today was special, though. "Are you nervous?" Cyrus asked, adjusting his tie in the mirror. Terrified, I admitted. What if he changes his mind? He won't. Cyrus turned, cupping my face. He's been asking about this for weeks. Trust me. The lawyer arrived at 10. Ms. Chen, a specialist in family law with kind eyes and a warm demeanor. She spent an hour explaining the process, the paperwork, the timeline, the legal implications. Mikhail sat between us on the couch, swinging his legs, occasionally signing questions. "So," Ms. Chen said finally, "the co-guardianship papers are ready to file. Once processed, Derek will have equal legal rights regarding Mikhail's care, education, and medical decisions." She looked at Mikhail. "Do you understand what this means, sweetie?" Mikhail signed. "Derek will be my real parent." "Like Papa." "Exactly." She smiled. "Is that what you want?" Mikhail's response was to launch himself at me, hugging tight. I looked at Cyrus over Mikhail's head, my eyes burning. "Yeah, I signed when Mikhail pulled back. That's exactly what I want." The paperwork took another hour. Signatures, initials, official stamps. When it was done, Ms. Chen shook all our hands, even Mikhail's, and promised finalization within 6 weeks. After she left, Mikhail ran to his room and returned with a wrapped box, thrusting it at me, bouncing excitedly. Inside was a framed drawing. New, more sophisticated than his earlier work. It showed our house, all three of us in front, and at the top in careful letters, "The Hale Evans family." "When did you make this?" I signed. "Last week. Papa said you were going to be my other dad officially, so I wanted it to be special." He paused, then signed shyly. "Can we really get a puppy now?" Cyrus and I exchanged looks. "We'll discuss it," Cyrus signed, trying to look stern and failing completely. That evening, after Mikhail was asleep, Cyrus and I sat on the terrace. The city spread below us, lights twinkling like earthbound stars. He handed me a glass of wine and settled beside me, close enough that our shoulders touched. "I never thought I'd have this again," he said quietly. "After everything fell apart the first time, I built walls. Told myself Mikhail and I were fine alone, that we didn't need anyone else. And now, I can't imagine life without you in it." He turned to face me. "You didn't just teach Mikhail to communicate. You taught me how to open up again. How to trust. How to love." I set down my wine and took his hand. "You taught me what home feels like. What family means. Before you, I was just existing, going through motions. Now I'm living." Cyrus pulled a small box from his pocket. My breath caught. "Before you panic," he said quickly, "this isn't that kind of proposal. We've only been together 8 months. I'm not rushing that." He opened the box to reveal a simple silver band. "But this is a promise. That I'm in this for the long term. That we're building something real together. That when the time is right, when we're both ready, I will ask you properly." The ring was beautiful. Understated, but elegant. I let him slide it onto my right hand, then pulled him into a kiss that tasted like wine and promises. "I'm holding you to that," I whispered against his lips. "Good." We sat there for a while longer, comfortable in silence, his hand in mine. Inside, I could hear Mikhail stirring, probably getting water. The house felt alive in a way it never had before, filled with noise and love and chaos and joy. "Hey, Cyrus. Do you remember that first night at the gala? When you were terrifying and I was awkward?" He smiled. I went home that night and couldn't stop thinking about you. The way you saw Mikhail really saw him not as a disability or a problem, but as a person worth knowing. He was impossible not to see. But everyone else managed it just fine. Cyrus shook his head. I ran a background check on you that night. Comprehensive. Everything came back clean, but I still didn't trust it. Didn't trust you. I was so sure you'd be like everyone else, there for a paycheck, gone when it got hard. I almost left, I admitted. After that first week, I was overwhelmed. Worried I'd mess up. That I wasn't qualified enough. What made you stay? Mikhail drew me a picture of a dinosaur. Wrote, "Thank you for being my friend," at the bottom. I smiled at the memory. How do you walk away from that? You don't. Cyrus said softly. You build your entire life around making sure that kid keeps smiling. A crash from inside made us both jump. We rushed in to find Mikhail in the kitchen, sheepishly standing next to a knocked-over chair and a very guilty-looking expression. I wanted cookies, he sighed. For celebrating. Cyrus tried to look disapproving. It's 10 o'clock at night, but it's a special day. Mikhail's eyes went wide and pleading. Please. I looked at Cyrus. He looked at me. We both cracked. Fine, I sighed. But just two. And we're all having them together. We sat around the kitchen island, eating cookies and drinking milk. Mikhail chattered away, signing about his friend Marcus at school, the science project they were planning, the puppy he was definitely going to convince us to get. Normal. Domestic. Perfect. This was my family. Not by blood, not by traditional means, but by choice. By love. By showing up every day and choosing each other over and over again. Later, after Mikhail was truly asleep and Cyrus was working late in his study, I stood in the doorway of Mikhail's room, watching him sleep. His drawings covered the walls now. Our family in 100 different iterations, always together, always smiling. I felt Cyrus come up behind me, his arms wrapping around my waist, chin resting on my shoulder. Our son, he whispered. Our son, I agreed. And that was everything. #epilogue. 2 years later. The pup had Cyrus's gray eyes and my honey chamomile scent. She was born on a Tuesday in the middle of a thunderstorm, and Mikhail had signed Loud Baby approximately 400 times since we brought her home. Tonight, though, she was asleep. Finally, Cyrus was in the kitchen, attempting to make bottle preparations one-handed while reading a bedtime story to Mikhail with the other. I watched them from the doorway, my alpha, my sons, my home, and felt something swell in my chest so large I thought it might burst. Cyrus looked up, caught my eye, and smiled. What? He mouthed. I shook my head. Nothing. Just thank you. For what? For that night at the gala. For hiring me. For staying. He crossed the room, ignoring the half-finished bottle, and pulled me into his arms. Thank you, he said against my hair. For seeing him. For seeing me. For not giving up. I looked up at him, this impossible, infuriating, tender, complicated alpha who'd somehow become my entire world. I love you, I said. I love you too. Mikhail appeared at our feet, tugging on my shirt. Papa, he sighed. Daddy, you're being gross again. Cyrus and I exchanged a look, the kind of look that had become our private language over the past 2 years. The one that said, we made this. We made all of this. Sorry, buddy, I sighed. We'll try to be less gross. Thank you, Mikhail signed, already running back toward the living room. Also, can we still get a puppy? I laughed. Cyrus groaned. But he was smiling. He was always smiling now. The morning it happened, I was making pancakes. Cyrus had an early meeting, which meant I was on Mikhail duty, my favorite kind of morning. The sun streamed through the kitchen windows, catching the dust motes in golden shafts, and Mikhail sat at the island, signing emphatically about why pterodactyls should be classified as dinosaurs. They have wings, he signed, his small hands moving with impressive speed for a 6-year-old. And they fly. Dinosaurs don't fly. So they're special dinosaurs. That's not how taxonomy works, I signed back, flipping a pancake. But I admire your commitment. He beamed at me, and my heart did that stupid melting thing it always did around this kid. Then I felt it. A warmth low in my belly. Unmistakable. Familiar in the worst way. No, not now. Not today. Cyrus was going to be gone until at least noon, and Helen had the day off, and I was alone with a 6-year-old who definitely did not need to witness his Omega stepfather going through the early stages of a heat cycle. I set down the spatula carefully, trying to keep my scent under control. But my pheromones had other ideas. Honey and chamomile bloomed out of me like a flower opening too fast, filling the kitchen with sweetness. Mikhail's nose wrinkled. He looked up at me, confused. Daddy? You smell different. I know, baby. I signed with trembling hands. Daddy needs to make a phone call. Can you finish your pancakes by yourself for a few minutes? He nodded, but his green eyes, so like Cyrus's, watched me with concern as I walked, not ran, I refused to run, to the master bedroom. I closed the door, leaned against it, and pulled out my phone. Cyrus. Heat. Early. Need you. The response came in 3 seconds. Stay there. I'm leaving now. 20 minutes. My alpha was coming. I curled up on our bed, breathing in the scent of him from the pillows, cedar and citrus, smoke and storm clouds, and tried to remember how to be a functional human being while my body screamed at me to find an alpha. Find your alpha now. He made it in 16 minutes. I heard the front door open, heard his voice low, urgent, talking to Mikhail. Then footsteps on the stairs, and then he was there, filling the doorway, gray eyes dark with concern and something else. Something hungrier. Derek. I'm sorry, I gasped, even as my body arched toward him instinctively. I didn't know it wasn't due for another 2 weeks. Don't apologize. He crossed the room in 3 long strides and gathered me into his arms. His scent washed over me, and I whimpered, actually whimpered, as the heat in my belly flared hotter. I've got you. I've got you. His hand cupped the back of my neck, thumb pressing against my scent gland, and I went liquid in his arms. Omegas were wired to respond to that touch, and my body had never understood the assignment better than in that moment. Mikhail. I managed. I put on a movie for him. Told him you weren't feeling well, and I needed to take care of you. He's fine. Cyrus's voice dropped lower. You're the one I'm worried about. How long since it started? 20 minutes. Maybe 30. Your first heat since the last one you helped me through. Yes. Buried my face in his chest. They're getting stronger. Closer together. He was quiet for a moment. Then, that's a good sign. I looked up at him. What? For omegas in bonded relationships, heats often become more frequent. He hesitated, uncharacteristically uncertain. It's the body preparing. For potential. Pregnancy. The word hung between us, unspoken but loud. I thought about it, of course. In the quiet moments, when Mikhail was asleep and Cyrus's hand rested on my stomach, and the house felt full in a way it never had before. I thought about another pup, one with Cyrus's gray eyes or my honey scent, one we'd planned for and wanted. Is that something you want? I asked, my voice small. Cyrus's expression softened. He cupped my face in both hands, thumbs brushing my cheekbones. I want you. Whatever that looks like. If it means more pups, I'll be the happiest alpha alive. If it means just Mikhail and you and me, I'll be the happiest alpha alive. He pressed his forehead to mine. You're my family, Derek. Everything else is extra. I kissed him. It started soft, grateful, but my heat had other ideas. Within seconds, I was pulling at his shirt, desperate for skin, for more, for him to be inside me, and around me and everywhere all at once. "Derek, please," I gasped. "Alpha." His control snapped. 3 hours later, I lay in a tangle of sheets, completely wrecked in the best possible way. Cyrus's arm was wrapped around my waist, his chest pressed against my back, his nose buried in my hair. He was still half-hard. He always was after my heats, but he gentled now, his touches soft and soothing rather than demanding. "You okay?" he murmured. "I can't feel my legs." "That's a yes then." I laughed, breathless, and turned in his arms to face him. His gray eyes were warm, his dark hair a mess, and he looked more human than he ever did in his boardrooms and business meetings. "I meant what I said," he told me quietly. "About more pups. About all of it. I know. But I also meant what I said about you being enough. Mikhail being enough. We don't need anything else to be a family." I traced my fingers along his jaw, feeling the slight roughness of stubble. "I know that too. But..." I hesitated. "I've been thinking about it. For a while, actually." "Thinking about what?" "Another pup. One we planned for. One who gets to grow up with both of us from the beginning, without all the complications." Cyrus's breath caught. I watched emotions flicker across his face. Surprise, hope, fear, love, before settling into something soft and vulnerable. "You mean that?" "I mean it." He kissed me slow and deep, and when he pulled back, his eyes were suspiciously bright. "Then we'll try," he said. "When you're ready. When we're ready. No pressure. No timeline. Just us." "Just us," I agreed. A knock on the door made us both freeze. "Papa? Daddy?" Mikhail's small voice came through the wood. The movie ended. "I'm hungry." And I drew you a picture. Cyrus and I exchanged a look, the kind of look that had become our private shorthand over the past year. The one that said, "This is our life now, and it's perfect." "We'll be right there, buddy," I called out, grabbing for my clothes. "Daddy." "Yeah. Are you feeling better?" I looked at Cyrus, my alpha, my partner, my home, and smiled. "Yeah, baby. Daddy's feeling a lot better." Mikhail's picture was predictably of a dinosaur. But not just any dinosaur. This one had wings, too many wings, wings in places wings definitely should not be, and a label at the bottom in Mikhail's careful handwriting. Pterodactylosaurus, the best kind. "It's a new species," Mikhail signed proudly. "I invented it. It's magnificent," I signed back, which made him puff up with pride. Cyrus watched us from the kitchen doorway, his expression soft in a way that would have shocked anyone who only knew him as the cold, commanding heel. He had a cup of coffee in one hand and a spatula in the other. He insisted on making dinner, claiming I'd done enough work for one day, with a wink that made me blush. "Papa," Mikhail signed, abandoning me to run to Cyrus. "Can Daddy stay forever?" "Like, really forever?" Cyrus looked at me over Mikhail's head. His gray eyes held mine, and I saw everything in them, the gratitude, the love, the quiet wonder that someone like me had walked into his life and decided to stay. "Yeah, buddy," he signed one-handed, balancing the spatula. "I think Daddy's here forever." "Good." Mikhail nodded firmly. "Because I already used all my good paper on the welcome to the family drawings, and I don't want to do it again." I laughed, and Cyrus laughed, and for a moment, the kitchen was full of nothing but warmth and sweetness and the smell of pancakes. Even though it was dinner time, because Mikhail had requested them, and neither of us could say no to that face. Later, after Mikhail was in bed and the dishes were done, Cyrus and I sat on the terrace, watching the city lights. The spring air was cool, carrying the scent of blooming jasmine from the garden below. Cyrus's hand found mine on the armrest between us. His thumb traced circles on my knuckles. "You really meant it." "About trying." I turned to look at him. The moonlight caught the sharp lines of his jaw, the soft curve of his mouth. He was beautiful, not in the way magazine covers were beautiful, but in the way home was beautiful. Familiar and safe and entirely mine. I meant it. And you're not scared. I'm terrified. I admit it. But I was terrified when I said yes to being Mikhail's tutor. I was terrified when I moved in. I was terrified when I signed the guardianship papers. I squeezed his hand. Being terrified doesn't mean it's the wrong choice. It just means it matters. Cyrus lifted my hand to his lips and kissed my knuckles. What did I do to deserve you? Pretty sure you hired me. He laughed, a real laugh, the kind that crinkled his eyes and made him look 10 years younger. Best decision I ever made. We sat in comfortable silence for a while longer, watching the city breathe below us. Inside, I could hear the soft sounds of the house settling, Mikhail turning over in his sleep, the refrigerator humming, the distant tick of the grandfather clock in the hall. This was my life now. Not the one I'd planned, not the one I'd expected, but better. So much better. Hey, Cyrus. Thank you. For coming home today. For always coming home. He turned to face me fully, pulling me into his arms until I was tucked against his chest, his chin resting on top of my head. There's nowhere else I'd rather be. And in the quiet of the spring evening, with my alpha's arms around me and my son sleeping safely inside, I believed him. 3 weeks later, I woke up nauseous. Cyrus was already awake. He was always awake first, an alpha thing, and he pressed a cool cloth to my forehead without me having to ask. How long? He asked quietly. I don't know. A week? Maybe 2. Have you taken a test? I shook my head, and he was up and moving before I could say another word. He returned to the small box from the bathroom drawer, the one we put there months ago, just in case. Together, he asked. Together. I took the test, and we waited. 3 minutes that felt like 3 years. And when the little screen showed 2 pink lines, Cyrus pulled me into his arms and held me so tight I could barely breathe. We're having a pup, he whispered. His voice cracked on the last word, and I realized he was crying, my stoic, controlled alpha, crying into my hair. Yeah, I said, my own tears falling freely. We're having a pup. Mikhail burst into the bedroom at exactly that moment, demanding pancakes. We told him over breakfast. His reaction was instantaneous and emphatic. Another baby? Can I name it? I want to name it Pterodactyl. Cyrus looked at me. I looked at Cyrus. We'll take that under advisement. Assigned. Pterodactyl Hale Evans. Mikhail signed back, already convinced. It's perfect. Cyrus leaned over and kissed my temple, his lips lingering. Our family, he murmured. Our family, I agreed. And 9 months later, when her daughter was born with gray eyes and a honey scent and lungs that could wake the dead, Mikhail took one look at her and signed, Okay, maybe not Pterodactyl. Maybe. Elizabeth. We named her Elizabeth. But we call her Lily. And every night, when I put her to bed in the nursery next to Mikhail's room, I think about that first night at the gala. The lonely boy in the corner. The alpha who hired me. The life I never knew I wanted. This is my pack. My family. My home. And I wouldn't trade it for anything.